a great weekend. My name is Reagan. I am an educator here with Save the Bay, and today we have Captain Meghan behind the camera. We want to welcome you back to another Breakfast by the Bay segment. And while everybody is tuning in this morning and getting logged on, we just want to remind everyone, whenever you guys are watching, let us know what school you guys are from. We love hearing where all of these videos we're putting out are able to reach every single day, and being able to give you guys a little shout out. And also, if you have any questions throughout the video, put those in the comments as well, and we'll do our best to answer them if we don't know the answer, but we'll definitely get back to you afterwards with some more information on that. But if you have any questions at all or comments, put those in there and Captain Meghan will read them out for us. So again, for anyone who is just joining, my name is Reagan and we have Captain Meg behind the camera, and today we are going to be discussing estuaries. And estuaries are probably a little bit familiar to a lot of you guys if you've ever been to our Bay Center, our Exploration Center, maybe you've been on a program with us, whether it was in school or otherwise. We spend a lot of time talking about it at Save the Bay. So we're going to go into a little bit more detail about what they are, maybe for anyone watching who doesn't know what they are, and exactly how many maybe different kinds there are, and why they're so important to our ecosystems here. So to get us started, right behind us, I'm just going to start out very basic with what is an estuary. An estuary is an area where fresh water from rivers and streams meets the salty water from the ocean. And it mixes together and it forms a totally new type of water called brackish water. Now again, if you've ever been on one of our programs, you've definitely heard us talk about this term before. It's a very unique type of water that's a little salty and a little bit fresh, that can then mix together in these different types of areas called estuaries, creating a very unique ecosystem. Now, these different estuaries can be called very different things. They can be called a bay. You might have heard it called a lagoon, or maybe even a sound. All of these words are referring to that same basic ecosystem of an estuary, no matter what you're talking about. So, anyone at home, maybe you guys have heard of a certain bay that is right here in Rhode Island. And that bay is, of course, Narragansett Bay. So we have this handy dandy chart here. I believe in our very first video, if you were able to tune into that, Letty showed you guys this map or this chart a little bit. So I won't go over it too in detail, especially because I'm sure some of you have probably seen this on our programs with us at our Bay Centers or Exploration Centers also. But for those of you that haven't, this is a beautiful chart of our Bay Narragansett, and it starts all the way at the top in Providence, and that is where me and Captain Meghan are this morning, and it goes all the way down 26 miles and ends in Newport, Rhode Island. Now that is where you guys might have been watching Captain Jen or Captain Eric do a few videos of Breakfast by the Bay out on the boat, all the way down here. And as we look at this chart, it just gives you a really good idea of how we have all of this ocean coming up into our bay, as well as all the different fresh water coming down from the mainland to mix and make that really unique brackish water ecosystem. So now that we've gone over what an estuary is, I want to kind of spend most of my time going over with you guys different types of estuaries. So some of you might not have known there's actually different types that you guys can come across throughout the world. So we will head over to our next board to go over those for you guys. All right, so with our different types of estuaries, I'm going to be going over them in more detail, but as we're going over them, there's actually 4 different types that you could come across throughout the world. And as I go over them in detail, I want you guys at home to be thinking about which category does Narragansett Bay fit into? Which one of these 4 different types do you think Narragansett Bay is? You can put it in the comments, and if anyone guesses it right, I will let you know at the very end. So to get us started, we will talk about coastal plain estuaries. So if Captain Meghan wants to zoom in, we have this wonderful demonstration here in this picture to give you a little bit better insight. But a coastal plain estuary is essentially just an estuary that's created when sea levels rise up and fill in an existing river valley. over time. So here you can see this estuary got filled in coming from this delta or the open mouth area, where it could be a river leading into this, a stream, and then it gets filled in from a different side by that ocean salty water. So an example of this that you guys might have heard of is Chesapeake Bay. That's in the Maryland, Virginia area, and that is an example of a coastal plain estuary where, again, there was an already existing river valley that the ocean was able to fill in over time and mix with that fresh water, creating that estuary brackish water ecosystem. So that is our coastal plain estuary. Our next type of estuary is a tectonic estuary. Now, a tectonic estuary, you guys might have heard this word before in a science class, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It is created by different tectonic plates. Now, these are big plates that cover the Earth's surface, and they move around. They have different fault lines or edges that might meet each other, and when that happens, those fault lines will have tons of activity going on. We know these as earthquakes a lot of the time. And over time, that tectonic activity will create a depression in the Earth's surface that you can see right here. So we would have one fault line over here, another right over here, and as they rub together, move around, they create this depression, allowing for an estuary to form. An example of this would be San Francisco Bay Estuary. So this is an excellent example where you can see the ocean, and right in here it was able to fill in where actually two different fault lines lied and worked against each other, creating lots of tectonic activity to create all these different bays. And this is another excellent picture where we see San Francisco Bay, and again, this one is located on both the San Andreas and the Hayward Fault. So because of that, all the activity over time created that depression, allowing for the Pacific Ocean to fill in and then mix with any kind of fresh water that was coming in from the mainland in this bay area. All right, so our third type of estuary is going to be a bar-built estuary. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but that bar-built estuary, again, very much what that name suggests. It is an estuary that's created thanks to a bar or a physical barrier right there. So as you can see here, this is a great job of showing you guys. There would be an estuary right here, and we have this physical barrier, maybe a sandbar or a sand spit as this picture depicts it, protecting this estuary from open ocean. But then also we have fresh water coming in here, and all we have to get fresh or salt water in is that little inlet right here. So an excellent example of this type of estuary is going to be down near the Outer Banks in North Carolina. So we have a picture here where you guys can see all the Outer Banks islands here, and they create that physical barrier or that bar area protecting this sound from the open ocean. But all along here you have little inlets like right here, maybe some farther down along the island chain, and then you have rivers and streams that feed in that fresh water it needs to become that brackish water that all estuaries have. So this is another picture to give you guys a really clear view where we have our bay on this side that is fully protected by that barrier of our Outer Banks islands from the ocean right over here. So that is our bar-built estuary. That is, again, they're formed whenever those estuaries or those bays are going to be protected by a physical barrier from that open ocean. So our last estuary that we have is going to be the funnest one to say, I think, the Fjord Estuary. And this Fjord Estuary, they're really unique in that they are created solely from glaciers. So a long time ago during the Ice Age, we had giant glaciers going across the Earth's surface, and they were actually carving out really deep, really narrow valleys inside of Earth's crust. And that's where we get that really deep, narrow U shape from those glaciers moving around. So because of that, those glaciers receding over time, moving around, the ocean was able to come in and fill those estuaries and mix with any kind of fresh water, again, coming in from the mainland. So these are really popular in areas where you have a lot of glaciers. that might be moving around up north near the poles, and an example of this is going to be maybe the Puget Sound. Now, the Puget Sound is actually a system of multiple estuaries, but it has tons of these really deep, narrow crevices created by our glaciers where that northern Pacific or Arctic Ocean would be able to come in, fill in those really narrow valleys carved out thanks to our glaciers, and mix with seasonal streams and rivers that are coming in. Now, because the streams and rivers coming in for this particular estuary are seasonal, that means our Puget Sound is a little more salty than your average estuary, since they don't constantly have a fresh water source, but they do have one regularly enough to still be considered that estuary. So these two pictures here are just excellent examples showing you guys those estuary areas that were carved out thanks to our glaciers. All right, so really briefly, we can go over again as you guys are thinking, which one of these does Narragansett Bay belong to? Do we think Narragansett Bay was formed by glaciers carving out deep, narrow valleys? Is Narragansett Bay protected by a sandbar or barrier islands? Are there tectonic plates that we're sitting on here in Rhode Island that might have made a lot of activity, causing a depression in the Earth's surface and making that Narragansett Bay? Or are we a coastal plain where over time we had an already existing river valley or lowered area of Earth that allowed rising sea levels to move in over time and mix with rivers and streams? So, if you guys guessed that Narragansett Bay is a coastal plain, you are absolutely right. Narragansett Bay is considered a coastal plain estuary. So, but as you travel around, as you can see, there's tons of different types that you can see, but they all have lots in common in that they are extremely important ecosystems and have many different habitats inside of them. So, we'll go over to our next board, and I know that this might look a little familiar to you guys. So you guys went over a lot of this with Janine in another video, but I like to kind of just bring it all together for you guys in one big video, just so you guys can see those are what estuaries are and what is inside of them and why it's so important, right? So in our Narragansett Bay, if you guys have ever visited it, maybe you've taken a stroll around it, swam in it, you've seen all these different habitats, I'm sure. So our sandy beach and rocky shores are going to be excellent habitats that are good for shelter and homes for different animals. We also have salt marshes you guys might be able to see, and that's going to be an excellent buffer zone, maybe during storms that might come in from the ocean, and also are kind of like a built-in filter for our bay. And again, we learned a lot of this with Miss Janine, and I'm just briefly going over it again with you guys. And our last habitat that you guys might see, other than these, are of course going to be the brackish water, right? The water that's inside the bay. And that is a super important habitat because it's very, very nutrient rich. It's getting nutrients from two different sources, right? The ocean and our freshwater rivers and streams. And it's mixing together, creating tons of nutrients. And actually, many, many animals, both in the water and outside of it, will seek out estuaries specifically for nesting grounds and also for foraging and finding food. So they're super, super important for all of those animals, but not only animals, humans depend on estuaries a lot as well. So actually, if you guys think about it, and I did a little bit of my research, found out most major cities in the world are located on or near estuaries. And that's because they are amazing for creating jobs, right? Like fishermen, boat captains. Ecotourism is a huge thing that's been happening recently. Also, food is a big one. 75% of the commercial fishing catch is actually caught straight from estuaries in the United States. And it's even more than 75% if you count in recreational fishing as well. So that is a huge source of food coming just from areas like Narragansett Bay here in the United States. And along with that, we also have tons of recreational use in our estuaries and our bays. So those recreational uses, whether it's boating, swimming, people coming to see all the birds that gather here seasonally or year-round, or even, again, just fishing, if people want to come out and enjoy that. that can generate anywhere from $8 to $12 billion a year for cities and towns near those estuaries, just from people coming in and bringing in tourism and all of that revenue. So it's an amazing, amazing thing that not only these animals can benefit from, but that we can benefit from as well. So again, if you guys haven't already heard, estuaries are super important, and that's why we wanted to take some time this morning and just go over in more detail what they were, why they matter, how they came to be, and hopefully you guys can go out and visit your estuary or your bay very soon once everything starts to calm down. But again, thank you so much for tuning in. That's all I have for you guys this morning. If you have any questions, again, we'll do our best to answer those in the comments afterwards for you guys. And if you want to continue to support Save the Bay, there is a link in the description. You guys can click on that to get more information on how you can continue to support Save the Bay and all the work that we're doing. But thank you very much for joining us, you guys, and we will see you again tomorrow for another Breakfast by the Bay. Bye.